morning. We are at Grassy Waters. This is the northern part of the Everglades ecosystem and our local area watershed. This provides water to the Loxahatchee River ecosystem, and I just love coming here. It's not too far away, so I can quickly hop on I-95 and get here and be immersed in this wild Florida landscape, elevated on a boardwalk, and it's a great way just to reconnect with nature and to be outside. Just started exploring more about my local community and my local area and what was accessible in terms of wild spaces, restored natural areas. There are many opportunities to get outside and reconnect with nature, and pretty quickly. You know, you don't have to travel for miles and miles and miles. I try to get outside pretty regularly. It's just a great way for me to mentally reset and think about what I'm working on, think about life. Just take a deep breath and calm down, and yeah, it's pretty great. These are magical spaces. Parents started an environmental testing laboratory, and so I got to grow up inside of a laboratory and outside. It was just one of the two, you know. I would go and help as a young child, help my parents, help them do sampling and help with taking field measurements and collecting water samples out on rivers and canals. And so I really spent my formative years, I was outside or in a laboratory. And so these spaces feel very comfortable to me. And that's not true for many people who don't have access to these kinds of spaces. So I really don't take this for granted. And it was art that really reignited my love of the outdoors. Doing research for my work and just thinking, you know, being outside in nature, it's a really important space for me just to come think. School in West Palm Beach, and then I went up to Washington DC for college and spent most of my free time at the National Gallery of Art and the Phillips collection, actually. So that's when I realized I should probably change my major, and I ended up leaving there with an art history degree. DC was really great, and you know, you would think I would be more attracted to the Smithsonian Institution maybe, but there was something about the National Gallery of Art. It was built by I.M. Pei, and it's just a beautiful building and structure. And then of course I love doing research at the Library of Congress. So not everybody gets to do that in their college experience, but I did, and I am eternally grateful for the experience of living in DC. Yeah, I'm sure it's very different now. I haven't been back in a few years, and the last time I was there, it was quite different. You know, just as cities do what cities do. When I was more of a landscape artist, it was very much tied to a specific place or location. Now, my work, I feel, transcends all these experiences and places, which I like a lot more. I like that it feels more, I don't know, it's like looking at an Agnes Martin drawing, right, or an Agnes Martin painting. You're not quite sure where you are in time and space, but you know that you're feeling moved by the experience. And I really, really do strive to achieve that with my work. Even though I think, and you know, even Georgia O'Keeffe, she was a wonderful landscape artist. Agnes Pelton is another one. These are, I guess, transcendent experiences. And so I think that they can surpass specificity of location. At least that's the goal. different and new, and all these critters are invariably way more terrified of us than we are of them.
That's usually the case.
But it's the fear of the unknown. So that keeps us, you know, out of these places and afraid from trying these things. But I think it's worthwhile. I mean, look at all these great shapes down here. So these are lilies, and the leaves, they're just, I mean,
lily pads.
Right. So even something as simple as this, you know, my mind starts to abstract these shapes. I can look at a tree and draw a tree or paint a tree, sure. And for me, that's no longer where it's at. For me, it's what does that tree evoke? What are the ideas that I get from staring at this tree for a really long period of time? So these walks that I do, they are really just me sort of recalibrating how I am operating in the world. So it's a chance for me to reset, recalibrate. Life gets pretty busy and hectic sometimes, and it's easy to just get sort of swept up into a wave of activity and doing and being busy. But I find that less is more frequently, and creativity thrives in those open, quiet spaces. And so I get ideas. I feel more connected here with the non-human world outside. I feel more connected to my fellow humans, our place in the world and the universe. I think about time, decay, possibility. And so these spaces give me that, clearness to allow these ideas in. I think artists are like canaries in coal mines, or like we have antenna, and we are receivers of information and ideas. And we just need to give ourselves the grace to welcome those ideas. I think art is how I navigate life. I seek a heightened awareness, a visual and emotional experience through art. It has its own energy and power, the ability to inspire hope, support healing, or illuminate hidden truths. Art can be a remedy, a refuge, or even propose solutions. And for me, it does all of those things. Hi, at the Art. Well, welcome to my outdoor studio.
Excellent. We can't wait.
So I brought some oyster shells salvaged from local restaurants. I can't tell you the kinds they were. They were delicious. And so I just bring them here. I kind of clean them and then I age them in the yard. I let the ants eat up the extra remnants, and then I just let them sun cure. So these are actually just about ready to start processing. I might start with one that's a little bit cleaner, like this one. So it's a pretty straightforward. This is not high tech. This is ancient low tech. But I will wrap it for safety in a cloth, and then I probably should take this down on the ground. And then wear safety goggles and don't do this at home. But it's really that, they crush readily, and then you just keep going until you get finer and finer particles. There's some lovely lavenders in there. And then you get these finer bits until you can't go any finer with the hammer. And I should be wearing gloves. I'm going to say this. Oyster shells are filter feeders, and they do contain heavy metals and forever chemicals, so we should all be very safe when we're doing this. But then you just grind them, mortar and pestle. This is very, very old school.
So my question to you is, when did you realize this is where your work had to go? This process?
I can really tie it back to 2020 when I was at an artist residency down in Fort Lauderdale at IS Projects to create my first artist book. And that was entitled Convergence, and it was about a memory from my mother's childhood growing up on the Atlantic coast of Nicaragua, a memory she would share about collecting oysters and the mangroves near the farm where she grew up. And I felt really connected to this story and her discussion of the landscape and how she would describe the walk from the farm to the mangroves. And so I completed that book, but something about the oysters just sort of lingered. And in my research for the book, I found them to be just really fascinating creatures, and what they do in the environment is pretty amazing. They're keystone species. They are architects of healthy reef ecosystems. They filter the water. They, in turn, are clearing the water, which enables sunlight to reach seagrasses down below, and then the seagrasses can flourish, and the manatees can eat the seagrasses. And it takes a while. This isn't for everybody.
How long does it take you to get it to where you want it?
A while. So I will do some minor sifting, but I really want it to be as fine as possible. Now sometimes I will let it be a little coarse, because that does add some interesting textures, and you can see that in some of the finished pieces. But for the most part, it's ready when it's ready. And it just gets lighter and lighter and finer. And then when that's finished, I place it into a nice jar so it's this dried.
Oh wow,
It's hard, yeah. So
you just keep doing this?
Exactly, yeah, you're doing it right.
God.
So twisting, and it's like, oysters are not like stone, right? So if we think of breaking rocks or crushing stone or things like that, they readily break up into tiny particles. Oysters, they're really like, it's like tissue. So it's like a lamellar, like, so think of like fish scales or nails, right?
Wow.
Fingernails. It's layers of growth.
My hands are getting sweaty. This is hard work.
Yes. So yeah, you're doing it right. You do like a twisting, and then you grind it through, and then you, yep.
This takes a very long time.
This is what people who get a little obsessive
Absolutely
do. It's probably not for everybody. It's a good workout though.
Absolutely it is.
Yep. But that's the other reason too, because you don't want to be breathing this stuff in. You don't want to breathe it in. You don't want it in your eyes, or caution always. But yeah, it's a good hand and forearm workout.
This is hard work. Wow.
Good job though.
Okay, so we've been discussing a lot of things. The shapes. I didn't get a chance to ask you what are the meanings behind the shapes. I see you have some that looks like circles within circles, and I see some of them that looks like even musical notes, or let's say like a spike in energy. So walk us through these patterns and shapes.
Well, that's actually pretty perfect. So because I am interested in research chemistry and physics on a very, basic level as a non-scientist, but having grown up in a scientific world, I do find it very compelling when I see the shapes of atoms and molecules and those constituent components, and then how they interact. They create these beautiful compound shapes. And so I'm thinking about that, the elemental structure of things, and how atomically, right, at that micro quantum scale, everything really is particles and vibrating energy. And so I'm trying to tap into that. But then I'm also thinking about sounds. Not only the sounds that I hear when I'm in the landscape, but the sounds that I imagine perhaps things create that we can't hear, subatomic sounds. So I am thinking about sound waves and how sound travels, and the waveforms that those make. And right, so there's these recurring motifs, things sort of echo one another. We have particles and compound particles and shapes that we see in the landscape that also somehow appear in the quantum world, that appear in the macro, at the cosmic level. These things sort of all feed in and out of each other in my mind. And so when I see them, I find them to be really compelling. And so I try to recreate some of those same sensations in the work when I am making it. And they're interesting shapes. I love a good shape, I love a beautiful oval. Or the way that, these almost like black lightning bolts sort of arc through a passage. I like that they feel somehow familiar but strange. Like on the back of your brain, you might recognize some of these things, some of these shapes, but you might not be able to pinpoint it. But they're all essentially familiar to all of us on some level. I like that. I like that sensation, or that idea that anybody can look at these and see something that feels, that's an oval, I see that, or that looks like a waveform, or that looks like sound or light bouncing around. I think that that's really interesting.
What do you want viewers to get out of your work?
I hope they get a sense of what I get, the rewards I get from this work, from making this work and thinking about this work. Quietude, calm, or at peace. Or maybe it's just a quiet mental moment, a reprieve. Maybe a sense of connectedness with the world and other people. These are the things that I feel when I'm making this work. And I hope I'm able to transmit that to viewers. In making this work, I really do feel so connected to everything and everyone around me. It makes me want to be a better citizen of the world, be a better environmentalist, be more empathetic and compassionate, take better care not only of myself but of others around me, the spaces we inhabit. I hope people would feel similarly connected and inspired by the world around them. And yeah, I hope that that's what they feel, because I think that's pretty nice. I am always awestruck by what I experience when I look at the sky or visit wild spaces, and even not so wild spaces, and I try to cultivate some of those sensations with my art. I think about scale and perspective, and I love unexpected relationships, like how the wind carries ancient phosphorus-rich Saharan dust across the ocean to South America, where it fertilizes the Amazon basin, and along this journey affects the storms we experience here in Florida. I think about the idea that at very small scales, all matter, whether it's dust, tissue, shell, air, or water, is made up of vibrating bits of energy. And as I come to the realization that everything is likely made up of the same stuff, I have the distinct impression that everything must be connected with everything else, not just at the human scale, but at all scales. To me, reality seems to be a series of incomprehensible interconnections and interdependencies, some observable, but many that will likely must remain, mysterious. And in the end, I'm curious about how I navigate the present. So I choose to be amazed and filled with wonder, because as my lived experience becomes worthy of careful attention, it makes me want to be more mindful of all my interactions and to be a more thoughtful caretaker of the earth.